So this takes us up to about your early 40s or late 30s, about the time you found Ananda. So can you tell me how that happened for you?
Okay, I found Ananda, like I had said earlier, I found Ananda when I was looking. I was doing some Buddhist meditation, learning Buddhist meditation through a Tai Chi teacher that I had back years ago. And he was also, and I couldn't find out he was a Buddhist, and he was teaching me Buddhist meditation. And I told him that I was looking for. That's when I had started deciding that I wanted to find something, some way of connect, some kind of community or something that I could go out west and find some kind of Indian reservation or something. And he said, and couldn't find out, he said that he had been to, when he was younger, he had been to a place in California called Ananda. And at the time, I wasn't interested in Ananda because I didn't even know what Ananda was. And I said, no. And he said, well, he says it's more of a Hindu type place. And I said, well, I want to be a Buddhist like you. And he said, but I think Ananda's where would do you good. That's where you need to go. He said, they practice meditation and they teach you how to live, by, live everyday life. And I think that's where you need to go. And I said, but I was determined I wanted to be a Buddhist because he was, and I liked what he had to share at the time. And
was it his philosophy that you liked, or just you liked him as a person?
I liked it. Well, his philosophy, and he was a real calm person, and he seemed like a wise person to me, and I liked what he had, and I wanted that. And so I said, that's why I wanted to be a Buddhist, because I wanted what he had. And he said, well, whatever, but he recommended for some reason, he kept saying, well, I think you ought to go to Ananda. And I kept putting that off. And then I left his place. When I left his place, I was driving along and I found a little bookstore. And I went in the bookstore and I pulled a book off the shelf. And this it happened to be fall open. It was a pamphlet that had about Yogananda. And I started reading it, and it had a thing about Ananda Village ad in there. And it had a phone number to call for Ananda Village. And I called that phone number because I figured, well, that must be some kind of a sign, because he had just mentioned Ananda. And then Ananda kind of like fell in my lap right there, in the bookstore. So I called, and they said, well, we got a place. They were talking, we got a place near you, because I was in Georgia at the time. They said, we got a place near you. And they were talking about, I don't know if you've heard of him, but they were talking about I can't think of his name now. One of his other disciples. They were talking about one of his other disciples, and I called that number, and I said, and I knew that the Buddhist guy had been in California. So I said, I want to I want to make a reservation to come out there. They said, well, we got a place near you. And I said, well, I want to come out there. Roy Eugene Davis was that guy that I was thinking about. That was a disciple of Yogananda's. He was, a matter of fact, Kriyananda was a friend of his. They was a disciple of yoga. They was both studying Yogananda's teachings back years ago when Kriyananda was a monk, in charge of the monks. And but anyway, I called the number, and they put me down as coming out there. And so I told my dad, I said, I'm going out to California. I'm moving out to I'm going out to California. And he says, well, just and I said, I'm going to take my car out to California, and you can and I'll be back, and I'll be back after I go spend some time out there. And I went, and I was going out there, and he said, well, just do me a favor and fly out there and leave your car here, because he didn't want me to get stranded or something. And he didn't know what Ananda was, and he was scared. He didn't want me to be anything but a Baptist, because that's what all his family was. And so he said, well, just don't drink the Kool-Aid. And because he thought this was some kind of a cult, you know. And he said, just don't drink the Kool-Aid. Maybe find what you're looking for. And he sent me out he took me to the airport and put me on the plane, sent me out to California. And that's where I first I found Yogananda's teachings. And I signed up to work in the kitchen again. And it was a program called Yoga in Action. And this is now it's called Karma Yoga. And but back then it was called Yoga in Action. And it was a 2-month program, no, a 3-month program, I think. And I went out there and I signed up for that and took a bunch of other classes on the side. And they had a kind of like housing thing where they would put you up in kind of like dorm setting. And they would, and I stayed in a dorm out there. First I stayed in the tent, and then it got to be the rainy season and I got flooded. And they put me in the dorm and let me stay in there. And I stayed in the dorm and worked the kitchen, and I worked there for 2 years. And I was signed up for a 3-month course, and I stayed there for 2 years. And they kept saying they wasn't going to send me home. They weren't going to send me away as long as I was still learning something. And so I wound up staying for 2 years, and then I decided I met Riemann. And Podmer came out there to do that's what do they call it? Summer renewal week.
Spiritual renewal week.
Yeah, spiritual renewal week. And Raymond was talking at the spiritual renewal week, and I met him, and he said to call and talk to Carol about that I could move out here. And he said, come on out to Seattle. And so I give up my bed there so somebody else could take advantage of it and get, some of the teachings that I had gotten and some of the experience that I had gotten. And I came out here. I called Carol and came, and her and her husband back then, his name was Mel. They came out to the airport, Seattle Airport. No, Seattle train station and picked me up. I rode the train from California to here, and they picked me up at the train station and brought me out here, and I've been here ever since. That was like 20 years ago. So I've been here in Seattle for about 20 years now. I was there for about 2 years. So I've been here about 20, I've been with Ananda now about 22 years or so.
At this community?
Yeah. And then, well, not, I've been here at this community for about 20 years, and I was at the village for a couple of years. So overall, I've been at Ananda for about 22 years, but I've been in this community for about 20 years.
So when you were at the village, what were they teaching you? That you said you had planned for a couple months, but you ended up staying for a couple of years. What happened?
Well, I was just engrossed in Yogananda's teachings, and I was taking classes on chakras and karma and reincarnation and all kind of different things. And I was just I was learning all about what I wanted. I finally found what I was looking for all them years when I knew that there was something out there and I didn't know what it was. I finally found it when I went to Ananda. And that's when I quit looking for, I had gone out, I was going to go out west and try and find some kind of something in the Indian, in the Native American religion, and but I found what I was looking for when I found Ananda.
There's a lyric in a silly song that goes something like, "Before I met you, I missed you so much." Would you say that's kind of how you feel about Ananda?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, before I knew there was something out there. I just didn't know what it was. Couldn't find out it was Ananda. And I also related with Kriyananda, really strong too. I had a real strong connection with Kriyananda too, because I would get to meet him every now and then, because at the time he was living in Assisi, Italy. And he was coming back to the village on his birthdays. And we would have and on his birthday, we'd all meet him. And it was a big deal when he would arrive. We'd all stand in line and meet him as he would pull up in his car. And then he would stay at the Crystal Hermitage, and he would have a birthday party there. And I would get to go, I would be invited to go to his house, and I got to meet him a couple of times at his house and at his birthday parties and stuff, and it was just a great experience. And I remember one time I wrote down a list of some questions that I wanted to ask him, because I know that I was going to get to meet him, and I had wrote down list of some questions that I wanted him to answer. And he was sitting in a chair, and people go up to him and kneel in front of him, and he would talk to them, and they would ask him questions. And I pulled out my little notebook, and I was asking him them questions, and he was answering a few of them questions. And then finally he just put his hand on my head and said, "Just put that notebook away." And I said, "Okay," and I put that book, and answered all the questions I had, wrote down. I checked it after I got back to my room, and he had answered all them questions that I had wrote down, but he didn't ask, I didn't ask him out of the notebook.
What were some of the questions?
So I don't even remember what they was. It was questions about, well, a lot of it was all based on the teachings of Yogananda. It was about Korean, about stuff like what he, his experience with finding Yogananda, and how he rode the bus out there to Los Angeles when when he found out about Kriyananda, about Yogananda, and about reincarnation and stuff like that. It was all spiritual information. But he answered them all, and it was always a good time. And he would come and he would talk to us always. The house would be full of people. And he had. Have you ever been to his Crystal Hermitage?
No, I've never been to the village.
Well, I would recommend. It's fun.
Yeah.
And especially now with all the. I have been out there since Kriyananda's death. Actually, they got a place where you can go meditate. A building where his body is, and you go meditate. It's really nice. Yeah, and they had that temple. They had that tulip festival, and they have tulips everywhere out there. It's really nice. At the time when they have the tulips blooming.
You had mentioned that you had felt a connection with Kriyananda. Can you tell me more about what that means? Or for someone perhaps not from Ananda, what does it mean for you when you say you have a connection with someone like that?
Well, I don't really know how to explain that. That's kind of like that connection with the higher power. It's a kind of like, for me anyway, it's just a feeling like you know them, like you're a friend or a family member or something. And even though you might not have met this person before, you feel like you know them from before. It's kind of like it's kind of hard to explain, because to the lay person, you might not ever met, they might know that you have never met this person, but you have a feeling like you have met them. That's the connection. And a lot of times it is a connection because he knows somebody that you know, like he knows Yogananda, and you know Yogananda. And that relates back to the whole we're all one thing. Even though I ain't trying to say that I'm up there with Kriyananda and Yogananda, but we're still all one in a way.
So, how would you describe Ananda? I know about Ananda. I live here too, but I'm wondering, in your own words, what do you find it? What do you find here?
What I find here is what I missed all my life was a family. I have a family now, a big family, and everybody here is my family. And I don't have to, and you don't have to worry about the person next door. Like say, for example, if you lived on the outside, Ananda isn't for everybody. Don't get me wrong, but I don't have to worry, but like somebody that has to live on the outside, like for years, I didn't think I could live anywhere but Ananda after I accepted that Ananda was for me. I didn't think I could live anywhere but Ananda. Now I have grown enough. I have grown to the point where I don't feel like I feel like I could live without Ananda physically. When I say without Ananda, Ananda will always be in here. It will always be an inside job. So I'll always have Ananda in my heart, but I don't feel like I have to live at a Ananda village or Seattle community or any other Ananda community for that matter. I could live out there and I don't have and still have Ananda because I still would have Yogananda and inside here. But I wouldn't want to. So, I would definitely, I'm planning on dying at Ananda whenever I die. I'm hoping that it's going to be at Ananda, some Ananda somewhere, because that's the way I want to go when it's time. I want to be part of Ananda when I go out of here, because then I feel like my job is completed. This one anyway.
Yeah. While you've been at Ananda, did you have any spiritual experiences that you'd be willing to share?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that question, because I have all these experiences, but right now I can't think of one. But because it just seems like it's one big experience. And a year ago, I could have told you, well, I had this experience and that experience and this experience and that experience. But the longer I live here, it seems to be all one experience. So like right now, I can't think of one single experience that I've had. I know I've had them, but I can't think of it.
For people who don't believe in God or aren't sure, do you have any advice for them, or any not I know that we don't preach or proselytize or whatever you say, but in terms of searching, is there any advice?
Well, I would just say, I don't like to give advice on that because too much, because everybody has their own path. And I feel like it is not my place to tell you what path you should be on. But at the same time, I do feel like there is a God and that you need to be on the path. But what path that is, I don't know. And so my advice would be just be open and let it come as it will. What comes from without, let it come. Just be open to, just be open to whatever comes, and be willing to believe that there is something out there. There is a higher power. And at the same time, I kind of, now, I don't know that this is like what some people would think of as some people don't, everybody don't believe the same. So even in this community here, everybody don't believe the same. But as long as you believe in Yogananda, or that's for people to live in this community that believe in Yogananda. When I say as long as you believe in Yogananda, I ain't saying, as long as I believe in a higher power of some kind, I believe that my higher power and your higher power is the same higher power. It just shows up differently for me than it does for you, because it shows up as whatever we need. And like I believe in the one wax, many moles type thing, it's like God shows up for some people as Jesus, God shows up for some people as Buddha, as Krishna, whatever you believe, God shows up for you in that way. That's my opinion. So if you're searching for a God, don't limit yourself to what God you should believe in. Believe whatever is working at that time, because tomorrow you may believe in for me anyway, tomorrow I may believe in a totally different God than I believe in today. Or it may seem to somebody on the outside that I believe in a totally different God, because it may not look the same, because I change every day too. And as I change, my higher power changes. So that's what I believe.
You had mentioned that you had always believed in God, but you didn't always have a trust in God. As Yogananda or Ananda, were there any experiences that made you feel more trusting?
Well, just seeing, none that I can really think of right this minute, but just seeing people grow, and especially in AA, for me, because that is my like I said, that because I believe that to be my calling, helping people in AA that need to find a God. I'm not here to push Yogananda or my belief in a higher power on, my belief in a higher power on somebody else, because like I said, I believe it in the many moles, thing. And but what was the question?
Yeah, I forgot myself now. I guess I was saying, what helped you have trust in God?
What helped me to have trust in God? Okay, seeing other people grow and seeing that God develop in other people is it actually helped me. It actually helps me to see you change, is to see that it's possible for me to change.
Yeah.
So by me seeing God grow in you, God grows in, and I know God's growing in me.
Yeah. And I have to say, that's one thing I find so powerful about talking to, you might say the layman or the average person like you or myself, who has had struggles with these worldly things, because when we read the story of Yogananda or whomever, these saints, you know that they were always with God, and that obviously has a very high power, but it's in another way, it's very inspirational to hear about people who have the same or similar worldly struggles as us,
Right.
You
Yeah,
had to overcome them, with help.
yeah, it is. That's another reason I enjoy going to AA is because I get to hear stories from the person that is struggling, and I had them same struggles, and I overcome them, and I know that they can overcome them, and my job is to help them overcome some of them struggles, or at least try. And it is interesting that the saints have, sometimes they have, we hear, like, for example, Yogananda, we hear of them having these terrific lives, and we may think that that is great in a certain way, but they're so advanced that it is almost unbelievable. And we can relate to somebody that is struggling because we are at that point where we're struggling sometimes, and we can relate. At least for me, I can relate more with the newcomer that's going through the same stuff that I went through, or even going through.
Yeah. So one more question about, for as far as AA goes, to those people who are in their process now of wanting to get over their addiction to alcohol or whatever it is, and they're not over it yet, but they're trying, and they have to go through that fight. Do you have anything to say to them?
Well, the only thing I can say and about that is, if you're struggling, don't is what worked for me, and it worked for a lot of other people struggling. It's easier said than done, I know, but don't pick up that first whatever it is, like if it's a bottle or a pipe or a needle or whatever it is that you're addicted to. Don't pick up that first one, because once you pick up that first one, you might think, well, I will just have one. And there is no just one, because once you take that first one, then you think, well, that one, you might even think that one didn't hurt me. So one more will be okay. And then by the third one, you're saying, what the heck, I done messed up. So I might as well go ahead and do them all. And then and then the next day you're right back in the same boat, and you still got the same problems that you did when you picked up that first one. So my response to that would be, don't pick up that first drink or that first whatever. And just like I said, it's easier said than done. I know it seems like it's impossible, but it's not. It's possible. So just try, and if you can't, and if you got to, and it helps to call another alcoholic or another person that you can talk to about your troubles. And they can, and that sometimes that can get us out, that can get you out of a problem, is to just be able to call. That's why Alcoholics Anonymous has what they call sponsors. So you can call your sponsor and just say, hey, this is what I feel. This is what I'm going through. Even if you know that he's going to just say, well, pray about it. Even if you know what he's going to say, sometimes that's all you need, is to be able to hear somebody that you look up to say, this is what you need to do. At least that's what got me through a lot of the times because so I really believe in that sponsorship thing. And that's the same way with living in Ananda. We have what we call, spiritual advisors like Raymond or whoever that we look up to. And when we have problems with meditation or something, we can ask and get their advice on it. And it may be just what we need to get over the hump that we are stuck on at the time. And hopefully we're beyond having to go to AA, but there's a lot of people like me that still go to AA. But I don't go necessarily because I have to anymore. That I'm thankful for that. I don't have to go because I have to anymore. I get to go because I want to.
To help other people.
To help other people. Yeah. And to help me too, because like I was always told, you can't stay sober on yesterday's sobriety. So you got to keep going. And that's the same way with, like I say, I know I keep reverting it to keep comparing it with Ananda, but even in the spiritual path, you got to keep growing. Same way with drugs and alcohol. Don't think, well, okay, I done been to meetings for a year now. I don't have to go no more because I don't want to drink. Well, you might not right then. But who's to say what's going to happen when your dad dies 2 years from then? It's going to be, it's easy to go back, pick that up, do what you know. And it's to numb that pain of your dad dying or whatever it is.
So you had a really interesting question I wanted to ask you. Did you want to talk about being sick at all?
About being what?
About being sick?
No, there's nothing I really need to talk about there because it's just part of my karma. And like I say, and my karma is about even in the early days of my drinking and drugging and beat my body up. That was all karma. Everything we do is karma. Because if it wasn't for karma, we wouldn't be here.
I remember what I wanted to ask you. It didn't sound like this had come up for you in your life, but I think for myself and a lot of other people, there may be guilt about things that we did in the past that we feel would keep us from God, that we would be unworthy of God. Did you ever feel guilty or that your past would prevent you from having a spiritual or religious life?
No, to tell you the truth, I didn't, not that I can remember. Like I said, there's certain things that I feel is kind of removed from my memory. Like, for example, a woman that gives birth don't necessarily remember the pain that she went through giving birth, or she wouldn't have another kid. And I think some of that memory is kind of removed by the joy of being a mother. And I think it's the same way with alcohol and drug and even the spiritual plane way of life is it's so rewarding to be sober that I don't really remember a lot of the struggles that I had, but they must have been there, but I don't really remember them. They're kind of like removed from my memory, I think.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's hopefully that it would be nice if it was because I was kind of like maybe growing, and I don't remember a lot of that stuff because of the growing. I don't know. I think it is all a matter of growing to a certain extent, because if we don't grow, you gotta kind of, like they say, you gotta grow where you're planted. So if you hang on to them, if you hang on to the problems that you had in the past, you're gonna stay there. You're gonna keep spinning your wheels. You're gonna keep regretting the past and the things, and you ain't never gonna be happy. Like uh, like Joseph Campbell says, is some people are just miserable, ain't happy unless they're miserable. And I believe that to be true to a certain extent, because some people just can't seem to get out of the rut that they're in. And I think that has a lot to do with karma also, because they're stuck in that's where they're at on their path. They're stuck on that, remembering the past. And you got to learn to get out of that, let it go. That's why it is so important. The letting go thing is so important. It is what it is. Just let it go and move on.
Earlier as we were talking, you had mentioned that chip on your shoulder. Is it still there? or do you know, can you see what it was? Do you think you have an understanding of what it was?
Yeah, it was just my ego. It was just my ego. I think I have let a lot of that stuff go because I think I have let a lot of that stuff go because I don't really hold on to a lot of things, because like I said, I have seen that how important it is to let stuff go. And so the more I can let stuff go, the more that chip dissolves.
Yeah. Can you talk about where your parents ended up?
Well, my parents, they're dead. They died. My mother died of what they call, when she died, they just called it heart disease. But they, on her death certificate, it just said she died of heart disease. But it was, I'm sure it was because of all the alcohol, all the drinking she did. But they didn't know that back then. They just knew that, well, her heart quit beating, so she died of heart problems.
Yeah.
But they didn't really look at why the heart quit beating.
Did she ever stop drinking? No.
She drank, well, she did. She died in a nursing home, so she quit drinking because she couldn't get it.
Yeah.
But if I would have snuck it in there and give it to her, I'm sure she would have drank it.
Yeah.
Because she drank up until she went into the nursing home. Matter of fact, like I think I had said, how I took care of when they came back into my life. I took care of her and my sister, but because I didn't want to see my sister have to go through the things that I went through. And I knew my mother couldn't handle it because she didn't know how to live because she was an alcoholic. And so I took care of them. And I remember when my mother had one of her heart attacks. It's what but like I say, they called it a heart attack. But it was because of the alcohol. Because when I went to the hospital with my sister to see my mom, she was in CICU, and she was going through DTs and a heart attack, and they couldn't treat her heart problems because of her DTs. And they couldn't treat her DTs because of her heart problem. So they just had to let her lay there in the bed and see if she was going to live or not. And eventually they just kind of like caught up with her, I think. And she finally had a heart attack in the nursing home. And by then she had ruined her heart, and so she died. And my dad died he died not too long ago. He was the last one. My mom died about 10 years ago, probably. And my dad died about a year, 2 years now, maybe a year and a half, something like that. He died of just, he had Parkinson's and some heart problems and stuff like that. And I'm sure some of that was caused by alcohol, but he mainly died of Parkinson's disease and stuff. So he kind of like died. I think the alcohol wasn't as big of a deal for him as it was for my mom. My mom was the main alcoholic in the family. My dad, I think he drank just because he considered it to be fun at the time. And then he drank a lot because he was trying to numb some of the feelings that he was feeling because of my mom. And so it was just convenient. It was more of a convenience for him to drink. And that's why he drank, was out of convenience. And he wasn't as big of an alcoholic, I don't think, as my mom was. She was a real alcoholic.